You've seen it everywhere, right? In hotel rooms, in libraries, in millions of homes. It has shaped entire civilizations, sparked wars, and inspired some of the greatest art in human history. But what is the Bible, really? Well, today we're going to peel back the cover and find out. Okay, so let's start with a number, because the first thing you need to know is that the Bible isn't just one book, it's a library. And the standard Protestant version of that library holds 66 different books. But these 66 books, they weren't just written by one person sitting in a room. They were written by more than 40 different people. And we're talking a seriously diverse group: shepherds, kings, prophets, fishermen, you name it. People from totally different walks of life. Now, here's where it starts to get really wild. This incredibly varied group of writers didn't put this collection together over a few years or even a few decades. They did it over a period of a whopping 1,500 years. Yeah, just let that sink in for a minute. To put that into perspective, that's like someone starting a book series during the final days of the Roman Empire, and the last chapter being finished today on a smartphone. That's the mind-boggling timescale we're dealing with here. So with that kind of scale, all these books, all these authors, all this time, it's no wonder people look at it and ask, where do I even begin? How do you possibly approach something this massive? Well, the best way to wrap your head around it is to make one simple mental shift. Stop thinking of it as a single book you read from page 1 to the end. Instead, start thinking of it as a library, a whole collection of ancient documents, each with its own style, its own genre, and its own purpose. Okay, so you've just stepped inside this ancient library. Let's do a quick grand tour. The first thing you'll notice is that it's divided into two main sections, two big wings. The first wing, the bigger one, is called the Old Testament. It's got 39 books, and these were all written and gathered together in the centuries before the time of Jesus. And what you'll see right away is that these books aren't just stacked in chronological order. Nope. Just like a real library, they're grouped by genre. You've got a section for the Law, also known as the Torah, which has all the origin stories of ancient Israel. Then there's an aisle for history, a beautiful section of poetry like the Psalms, and finally, the books of the prophets. Just to give you a taste, let's pull the very first book off the shelf, Genesis. In a nutshell, this one book tries to answer the massive question of how God's relationship with the whole world even began. That's the kind of epic scope we're talking about here. All right, now let's head across the hall to the other wing of the library. This is the New Testament. It's a smaller collection, 27 books, and it really zooms in on one central figure, Jesus, and the very beginning of the Christian movement. And just like the Old Testament, it's got its own organization. It kicks off with the four Gospels, which are like biographies of Jesus' life. Then you get the book of Acts, which tells the story of how the church got started. After that, you've got a whole bunch of letters called epistles written to early Christian groups, and it all wraps up with the very famous, very apocalyptic book of Revelation. So for instance, if you grab the Gospel of Mark, you're going to get this super fast-paced, action-packed story of Jesus' ministry. It's all about moving things forward. See? Every single book in this library has its own unique flavor and focus. Okay, so we get the layout, we know our way around the library. But this is where our explainer takes a really sharp turn, because now we have to move past what's in the library to a much tougher, much more debated question. And that question is it true? Did the stuff described in these ancient books actually happen the way they say it did? The second you ask that, things get really complicated. You run smack into what's known as the historian's dilemma. And this right here, this shows you the heart of the problem. There's often a massive time gap between when an event supposedly took place, like the stories of Abraham, way back around 2000 BC, and when the text we have today were actually written down and finalized. We're not talking about a few years. We're talking about centuries, maybe even 1,000 years or more. This time gap has basically created a huge debate, splitting archaeologists and historians into two main schools of thought. On one side, you've got scholars called biblical maximalists. You can kind of think of them as giving the text the benefit of the doubt. Their starting point is that the accounts are probably reliable unless you find hard evidence that proves them wrong. But on the other side, you have biblical minimalists. They are way more skeptical. They see the Bible first and foremost as a book of theology, not history, and they argue that many of the stories were created much later. So, a minimalist might say something like this. The stories in Genesis, they aren't about what happened. Their truth isn't in the facts. It's in what they meant to the people of ancient Israel, what they revealed about their relationship with God. But a maximalist would fire right back and point to stuff like the Tel Dan stele. This is a real stone slab dug out of the ground by archaeologists with an inscription that literally mentions the House of David. For them, that's powerful proof that figures like King David were real people ruling a real kingdom, just like the Bible says. But here's the thing. This whole historical debate, as fascinating as it is, kind of misses the entire point for billions of people all over the world. For them, the Bible isn't about proving history. They come to it from a completely different angle, as a sacred, divinely inspired guidebook for how to live. From this spiritual perspective, the fact that dozens of authors wrote these books across continents and centuries isn't a problem to be explained away. That is the miracle. The belief here is that despite all the different human authors, there's one divine author behind it all, weaving one single, unified story about the redemption of humanity. So what is the Bible? Is it a brilliant library of ancient literature? Is it a contested historical artifact? Or is it a sacred spiritual guide? The answer is, it's kind of all three. And understanding these different layers, these different ways of reading it, that's the real key. The only question left is, which door to this library are you going to open?